Hello, welcome to the Sutliffian Report. Today, I am trying something new. I am trying a live cast on my Facebook group, Civilization Jihad Awareness, and I am trying to do this also through Blog Talk Radio, as I regularly do. This is something new for me. I have not really done this kind of thing before, so I'm going to give it my best shot. This week, I promised to talk about the Wuhan virus, the Chinese virus, as President Trump has correctly named it also. I think Wuhan is the best name because that tells where it came from. So I will probably be using COVID-19, Wuhan virus, Chinese virus when I talk about this, all those terms. Some people even call it the Wuhan flu because of that nice fever that comes with this. Now, locally, we have had in Monroe County, New York, we've had about I believe it's 100. I'll just double check real quick. We have the stats put up every day by the Democrat and Chronicle. Apparently we've had our first young child infected. So we're keeping track of what's happening here locally pretty quickly with our local newspaper. I'm not a fan of the local newspaper, but this is one of the best things I think it has done, is to try to keep us informed. The thing I'm not seeing with all the people talking about COVID-19 and the virus, no one is doing social networking analysis to the point where they're saying, have you been around this person? Have you been in this place? No one's talking about those things. I have concerns about that, because if we're concerned about how it's spreading, no one's talking about that. So we're going to get into where did this come from. So let me tell you my private thoughts that I've had for about since the beginning of this mess, and I've held them, and I've been curious about where we can go, where my private thoughts were, if they were accurate or not. I've only shared them with very close friends. My reasoning has been that I don't have any proof. So here's my private thoughts. The Wuhan virus, which I would have written and said something back in early March, late February. I believe the Wuhan virus is a biowarfare weapon developed by the Chinese. Now there is a lot of evidence to point to that fact. I have another point I have on this. My belief has been that Iran was helping them. There is some small evidence. To me, it would explain why the higher-ups had the Wuhan virus before others. So I want to explain to you where some of this information comes from. And this just came out, so it's brand new. To me, it kind of justifies what I've been saying. So I'm going to play for you Brad Johnson's piece on the Wuhan virus. It takes almost 15 minutes. Now that you've heard my thoughts, I want you to see the evidence that actually backs it up. Now, if you want, you can go to 3speak.online, look up VladTepesBlog as a channel, and you can find Brad Johnson on the Wuhan virus, or on the WMD, I believe it's also called the red Wuhan virus or something like that. But I'm going to play this for you. Play real close attention to what this says. To me, this is extremely scary. So if you're on the Facebook Live session, hold on a second. It's not easy for me to push two buttons at the same time. So I'm going to mute myself, and I'm going to play this piece. It's going to blow your mind.
And looking forward to an update on the, I guess, CCP, WMD, Wuhan flu, whatever this is, artifact or no, that came from China. What have you got for us today?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've watched how this has kind of unfolded, and there's a lot of maneuvering going on all over the world, and it's interesting to point out. Now, here in the United States, basically what you've had is the mainstream media and the Democratic Party are aligned with China on this, and they're playing China's tune. But let's go back and look kind of from the beginning of this. We had a 10-year period minimum where Chinese intelligence has been targeting the SARS virus as a research project. Now, this is the COVID-19, all of these are a SARS variant, a SARS family of viruses, of which there's a number of types. And so we know this absolute fact, and this is one of the things that's being disputed by the left-wing press, the mainstream media, both in Europe, the United States, and Canada, is this plain simple fact that this has been targeted by Chinese intelligence. Let me just give you a few examples of how. We saw in Winnipeg at the level 4 lab that's there that is investigating SARS, the Chinese woman that was a senior management person within that lab, and her students coming from China were coming and going from China. And where were they going? Wuhan, because they were associated with the level 4 lab there, where it's the epicenter of this whole problem. And she was eventually forced out because of protocol violations. What were the protocol violations? Well, what was suspected is she was stealing samples and all the classified information and having it go back to Wuhan with her students and herself. We had also a guy arrested, Chinese individual who was arrested at the airport in Boston. He was carrying illegal samples that had been smuggled out. Where was he headed? Wuhan. His intelligence officer handler, the Chinese intel guy, had left the country the same day, a few hours ahead of him, knowing, smart for the intel guy's side, because he would know too much, to leave ahead of this guy in case he got caught, which he did get caught. So that happened too. He was caught with samples tucked away in his sock in his suitcase. Then another one, we had the head of the chemistry department at Harvard University working in this Chinese program. I think it was called Points of Light or something like that. I've forgotten the name of it now, but it's another intelligence program run by the Chinese to collect information on precisely this. Now, in every one of these cases, they were all involved, tied with the SARS investigation, and all headed back to Wuhan, to this level 4 lab that's there where they were running this type of investigation. So we know they were collecting. We know this was over a 10-year period, a very aggressive intelligence collection program working on SARS. So they've been working on this for at least 10 years. Now, to the virus itself, and by the way, we just had the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, at a governor's meeting, tell the governor's meeting about these programs that's China relations to states, the individual 50 states, and how that was a whole Chinese intelligence run program. This is precisely the same thing done, but within the university system and for scientific sharing research and all of that purposes. So it's all in a front organization for Chinese intelligence. We know all of this. The other thing that's come out now, there have been a number of researchers, and here's where you start to see the cooperation between China and the left-wing media here in the United States and the Democratic Party. And that is, these researchers have come out, a lot of independent ones, and one of the things they've pointed out, and I have to read my note of this to make sure I don't screw it up, but they found 4 insertions in the spike glycoprotein. Now, that means, of course, very little to me and probably most of us, but what that means is these little spikes have, if they have an insertion on it, that means that mutated. They found 4. So what's important about this is that COVID-19 has 4 separate mutations in it that create it, to make it what it is, as dangerous as it is. Each one of those mutations, you have to understand, mathematically, none of the other SARS virus types have this. This is the only one, and it just doesn't have one mutation making it different, it has 4. So you have to understand, this is like running out and winning the lottery. Okay, that happens. There are variations. That's why we have a number of different types of SARS viruses. But this one doesn't have 1. It has 4. So it's like running out and winning the lottery, and then going out the next day or the next time it runs, 3 days later, winning it again, and then going out 3 days later and winning it again, and then going out 3 days later and winning it again. So they win the lottery 4 times in a row. Now, those are the types of odds we're talking about. It's in that range of odds. It's just statistically impossible for that to have happened. It went from exactly the same family as all the other SARS to having 4 mutations. That just isn't possible statistically to happen just by itself. And just take the same example of the lottery winner winning it 4 times in a row. Okay, theoretically, that's possible. It is theoretically possible. But we all know, looking at that, if that guy wins 4 times in a row, somewhere in there, somebody's got their hand on the scale. That doesn't happen naturally. The odds are too much against it. So this whole thing, now, where would that have happened? Like I said, we know the Chinese intelligence program has been working on it. Why would they be involved in such a thing? Well, we'd have to assume that it's weapons development. It is conceivable. It is, again, theoretically possible. These people were also working on cures for SARS-type viruses. So that was certainly cover for being involved in this research. So my guess is Chinese intelligence operation, their cover for action, their cover for being involved in this whole thing was research into cures, vaccinations for the SARS virus. And they were also simultaneously then actually working on the intelligence program, which was the real purpose behind this, of creating a weapon of mass destruction. Now, no proof of that. That is speculation, but that's what does fit the data. And I say to the left-wing media, what I've laid out fits all the facts that we know that are 100% certain. Now, you point out to me, what's your alternate theory? There is no alternate theory that fits this data. Now, at the back end of this, when this was leaked out, we have to assume this was something that was far more contagious than the normal SARS virus. So it makes perfect sense that the Chinese at the level 4 lab in Wuhan accidentally had it leak out of the system because they weren't prepared for how much stronger this was. Now, also in some of the scientific papers, they're talking about these mutations that took place on those 4 spikes are actually remarkably similar to what you see in the AIDS virus. And so it looks, now this is pure speculation, there isn't the science to back this up yet, although preliminary indications look like this was done taking AIDS and pulling little bits and pieces out of the DNA of that, and that's where those 4 mutations came from on the SARS virus. That is what scientists are speculating about right now. Well over my pay grade as to how that works out, but that is the early speculation. We're seeing all of this information now be suppressed, and this is why we've seen the left-wing media really crack down on this. There was a report that came out of India that indicated a lot of this. It was yanked for political pressure. It was not yanked. What they're claiming is that their procedures were done incorrectly, but that's not true because the procedures are to examine the new COVID-19 virus. That's all they were doing, was examining it, and they found these same 4 mutations in it that the American scientists are finding it. And where are they getting their information? This has all come from the National Institute of Health, where they have these things that people can go in and study online using the systems that the universities have connected to this stuff. So the independent scientists are going in and looking at it, and that's where we're getting this. Now, at the same time, again, initially when this hit, the Chinese were out saying, well, okay, this, SARS virus does indeed usually come from animals. It's a crossover virus. They have it. It's not so dangerous to them, but eventually in certain cases, the right circumstances will come about and it becomes infectious to humans. That's how those have crossed over in the past. So the initial claim by the Chinese was that this was something that had crossed over from bats and over to some like little aardvark-looking creature, and that then went over to humans. But that does not explain the 4 mutations. That would put it in the same family as all the rest of the SARS viruses that have existed for a very long time. So it's a non sequitur. It's something that doesn't explain anything. It's not statistically reasonable to say that was how this originated, but it was in Wuhan, so that was what their original excuse was. Now what we've seen is where they're going with this, and we have a worldwide propaganda program where the Chinese and the Russians are simultaneously blaming the Americans. Now this, they're saying it's a U.S. military gone awry, or that they planted it on purpose in China to attack China. So that pure propaganda, pure nonsense, pure BS, but that's what they're doing. That's where they've gone. Now you're seeing this be essentially supported by the left in the United States, by the Democratic Party and the mainstream media. They're not pointing out all of this stuff that I've just put together for you. This is a gigantic intelligence program gone awry, and it's still being fought in the intelligence arena. Now, that program, that propaganda program being run by the Chinese and by the Russians against the United States of America, That was something the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo commented on, saying it's complete nonsense and nothing like that ever happened. And so there was some pushback on that on the public stance. But this propaganda program is not for U.S. consumption, because we all already know that that just didn't happen. It's not for our to affect us. What they're doing is, this is a worldwide program to switch the blame off of China, who we now, you can be fairly sure this is all their fault. This was something they created that they accidentally let loose on the world. And now look at the suffering and pain and loss of economic income and all of these different things all over the world. And the Chinese absolutely don't want to be stuck with anything like reparations or blame or anything of that nature. And it's a huge tarnish on their reputation as a nation and their aggressiveness and their intelligence programs. It's a big problem for the Chinese. So what is their only option? Their only option is doing what they and the Russians are doing, and that's to blame the United States, and that is for worldwide consumption. Now, what the United States is not doing, and where the intelligence community is once again sitting on its thumbs instead of doing what they need to be doing, is fighting back on the world stage on this issue. And that's the propaganda, making sure that everybody gets all the details. We need to point out these mutations, point out they're not statistically possible to have happened naturally. The Chinese lied when they said it came from the seafood market where animals were also sold. And we have to point out that it was something that had to be created in their labs, and how they've been running an intelligence operation to collect on all of this, to work on SARS for at least a decade. We need to fight back on all that, get this out to the world stage so that people see that it's the Chinese fault, and make them pay for this. Make them pay for the damage they've done. How many Italians have died? I don't know about what the Iranian attitude towards it would be, but for the rest of us in the West, this is a serious problem. And they should be on the stick for this. They should be held responsible in every way for what they've done.
I couldn't agree more. I've got to say, would you agree that it's safe to move from a General Tao's bat theory to a Chinese communist general weapons theory?
Well, as I said, yes, that strikes me as the most probable scenario, because why would they have mutated the SARS virus 4 different times, especially if the material that was used for the mutations was drawn from AIDS? I don't think you could look at that and say, well, this was part of their quest to create vaccinations and cures and these sorts of things, because at that point it clearly becomes weaponized. So I would say, if the data is confirmed that these mutations were drawn and purposely introduced, drawing from AIDS and introduced to the SARS virus to create this COVID-19, if that is confirmed, then there is no other answer. It was a weapons development project, a bioweapons or WMD, weapon of mass destruction project. There is no other answer. And as I said, as you lay out the facts where we're at right now, what's the alternate theory? What other thing could it possibly be? So yeah, I mean, I think, just gaming this out, I don't see any reasonable, logical explanation for this whole thing other than Chinese intelligence operations for a weapons project that they lost control of. They weren't prepared for how successful this virus was at being spread so easily, and it got out of their control in Wuhan, out of their level 4 lab. What else fits those facts that we know? And there just isn't anything. So yes, I think it would be, mildly irresponsible to suggest anything else. I mean, you got to stick with what the facts indicate, and that's what the facts indicate.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Now, again, that was Brad Johnson, former chief of station of the CIA. I've met him personally. I have a lot of faith in the analysis that he provides. He is a person who is tied in still. He has information that many of us do not. And I have a lot of faith in him. Well, let me share with you, and the person who did this incredible video, I do want to tell you, if you want to see the video in person, you go to 3speak.online, and you will you look for VladTepesBlog, all one word, VladTepesBlog, and that's his channel. And he has another channel there where he works with the RAIR Foundation, RAIR Foundation, that you will definitely want to watch. Again, again, that was Brad Johnson's piece. I do want to say thank you for staying with me. Bigfoots, thank you for staying with us, and everybody else at the Civilization Jihad Awareness Facebook Live show. Thank you. Thank you for staying with me. Let me read to you another piece I have, and I said it was straight out of Italy. It just blows my mind. Now, VladTepesBlog also posted at 3speak.online. That's the number 3. I should tell people it's the number 3. 3speak.online. Now, he found an Italian news report on Chinese development of a hybrid coronavirus back in 2015. And this is a transcript that I got from that. It says, this is of an Italian TV report they called Leonardo, again, which you can find on VladTepesBlog on number 3, speak.online.
Scienziati cinesi creano un supervirus polmonare da pipistrelli e topi. Serve solo per motivi di studio, ma sono tante le proteste. Vale la pena rischiare? È un esperimento, certo, ma preoccupa tanti scienziati e un gruppo di ricercatori cinesi innesta una proteina presa dai pipistrelli sul virus della SARS, la polmonite acuta, ricavato da topi. E ne esce un supervirus che potrebbe colpire l'uomo, resta chiuso nei laboratori, ovvio, serve solo per motivi di studio, ma vale la pena correre il rischio, creare una minaccia così grande solo per poterla esaminare? Maurizio Menicucci.
Vecchio quanto la scienza il dibattito sui rischi della ricerca. In fondo è il mito di Icaro che cade per avere sfiorato il sole con le ali di cera progettate dal padre Dedalo. Lo rilancia un esperimento realizzato in Cina dove un gruppo di studiosi è riuscito a sviluppare una chimera, un organismo modificato innestando la proteina superficiale di un coronavirus trovato nei pipistrelli della specie, piuttosto comune, detta naso a ferro di cavallo, su un virus che provoca la SARS, la polmonite acuta, anche se in forma non mortale, nei topi. Si sospettava che la proteina potesse rendere l'ibrido adatto a colpire l'uomo e l'esperimento lo ha confermato. È proprio questa molecola detta SHCO14 che permette al coronavirus di attaccarsi alle nostre cellule respiratorie scatenando la sindrome. Secondo i ricercatori, inoltre, l'organismo, quello originale e a maggior ragione quello ingegnerizzato, può contagiare l'uomo direttamente dai pipistrelli senza passare per una specie intermedia come il topo. Ed è appunto questa eventualità a sollevare molte polemiche. Proprio un anno fa il governo USA aveva sospeso i finanziamenti alle ricerche che puntavano a rendere i virus più contagiosi, ma la moratoria non aveva fermato il lavoro dei cinesi sulla SARS, che era già in fase avanzata e si riteneva non così pericoloso. Secondo una parte del mondo scientifico, infatti, non lo è. Le probabilità che il virus passi alla nostra specie sarebbero irrilevanti rispetto ai benefici, un ragionamento che molti altri esperti bocciano. Primo perché il rapporto tra rischio e beneficio è difficile da valutare e poi perché, specie di questi tempi, è più prudente non mettere in circolazione organismi che possano sfuggire o essere sottratti al controllo dei laboratori.
Now, Brad talked about somebody from Wuhan coming to the States and trying to steal pieces of SARS. I hope you're paying attention. Okay, this was my thought originally. This is one of the reasons why I thought the White House was so drastically concerned when the stats were so low. It is because this is a bioweapon. 5 years ago, in Italy, they covered this. I'd love to know what Italy's thinking now. Now, my thoughts as to why on Iran being involved. Again, this starts with Iran being involved simply because their leadership is the one that got infected and you heard about first. Maybe there were others, but the ones we started to hear about first getting COVID-19 were Iran's leadership. So in light of that, I want to read you an article I have from the Center for Security Policy by Maya Karlin. It came out March 23rd. Amidst the COVID-19 outbreak, Iran and China chose regime health at the expense of the world health. Now, this is by, again, Center for Security Policy, Maya Karlin. Despite the spread of dangerous coronavirus, Tehran and Beijing have chosen to manipulate their outbreak to strengthen their strategic partnership and pop up their regimes. Are you seeing they have a similar strategy? Did they work this out together? The coronavirus outbreak has revealed the extent of the Tehran-Beijing relationship. The two countries' political, commercial, and technological ties most likely facilitated the rapid spread of the virus. When the coronavirus hit Iran in early February, regime leadership chose to sustain the status quo of its economy by choosing to prioritize the interests of the regime. Officials jeopardized the containment of the disease. Iran remains the most impacted Middle Eastern country by this pandemic. As of this week, Tehran claims its current death toll is 853 and counting, while the number of infections have breached 15,000. It is extremely likely that these numbers have been underreported, however. Iran's Deputy Health Minister, Iraj Harichi, became the first regime official to die from the virus last month. Footage of Harichi downplaying the outbreak while displaying obvious symptoms became viral overnight. It has been reported that the country's Vice President for Women and Family Affairs, a top official in emergency medical services, along with dozens of parliamentary members, have also been infected or have ultimately died from this virus. More recently, former members of the Expeditionary Council and Chief of Staff to Ayatollah Khomeini, Saeed Nur Mohammad, was declared dead in early March. The severity and early onset of infection rate among Iranian elites is indicative of the deep Beijing-Tehran relationship. However, the strategic partnership between these two totalitarian states is not new. Now I'm going to stop there. Have you heard enough that may indicate Iran was involved in this? Are you starting to see where my first thoughts came from? I kept them to myself until there was something to share. I mean, I only shared them with close friends that I could share what I'm thinking about, and they will tell you. I've been saying this for a month. I've been watching this. It didn't make sense to me that it was Iran's officials who were dying off first. And this is the stuff that had me thinking, what exactly is happening? So that's my big take on what's going on.